Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So we're going to get started in a couple of minutes. I want to give people time to tune in to this hangout before I get started. So if you can bear with me for 1 second, I'll be right back. So I see we have a couple of people tuning in, so I'm just going to go ahead and get started with this particular hangout. This won't be a long hangout, but I thought that this was something that's very important that we need to talk about. So I'm going to share my screen briefly, and I'm going to summarize some excerpts from a couple of articles, and then I'm going to provide my commentary. So just bear with me for 1 minute. So, as reported in several sources, CNN has severed their ties with contributor Marc Lamont Hill. They said that he's no longer under contract with CNN, and this follows some comments that he made on Wednesday about Israel, calling for free Palestine from the river to the sea. You know, and this sparked a lot of backlash. A lot of people were saying that he used a phrase that's been used by Hamas, which is a terrorist organization, and other anti-Israel terrorist groups. And Lamont Hill, you know, refutes their characterization of his statements. But this is what he actually said. He said, we have an opportunity to not just offer solidarity in words, but to commit to political action, grassroots action, local action, and international action that will give us what justice requires, and that is a free Palestine from the river to the sea. And in his speech, he talked about the need to boycott Israel because of their treatment of the Palestinians. As you all know, and I think it was 1967, Israel occupied territories. You know, they seized territories in what is referred to as Palestine. They seized control over the West Bank and Gaza Strip. And ever since then, there's been occupation of those territories, even Gaza Strip, even though they say that they have, you know, no longer occupy the Gaza Strip. They still control the flow of commerce in and out of the Gaza Strip. They have basically turned the Gaza Strip into an open air prison. So for all intents and purposes, they continue to occupy and control the Gaza Strip. So this brother is just calling out, you know, Israel for their oppressive policies against the Palestinian people. And in response to this, you got a lot of people calling him anti-Semitic and all that kind of stuff, saying he's an anti-Semite. And we're going to get into that. I'm going to make the distinction between, you know, Zionism and Judaism. We'll talk about that in a minute. But these are some of his tweets in response to this controversy. He said, I support Palestinian freedom. I support Palestinian self-determination. I am deeply critical of Israeli policy and practice. I do not support anti-Semitism, killing of Jewish people, or any other things attributed to my speech. I spent my life fighting these things. And then he goes on to say, my reference to river to the sea was not a call to destroy anything or anyone. It was a call for justice, both in Israel and in the West Bank, Gaza Strip. The speech was carefully and specifically said those things. No amount of debate will change what I actually said or what I meant. And, you know, he went on to say some other things. And then here's some excerpts from his speech. He talked about how, contrary to Western mythology, Black resistance to American apartheid did not come purely through Gandhi and nonviolence. Rather, slave revolts and self-defense and tactics otherwise divergent from Dr. King and Mahatma Gandhi were equally important to preserving safety and attaining freedom. If we are to operate in true solidarity with the Palestinian people, we must allow the Palestinian people the same range of opportunity and political possibility. If we are standing in solidarity with the Palestinian people, we must recognize the right of an occupied people to defend itself. We must prioritize peace, but we must not romanticize or fetishize it. We must advocate and promote nonviolence at every opportunity, but we cannot endorse a narrow politics of respectability that shames Palestinians for resisting, for refusing to do nothing in the face of state violence and ethnic cleansing. So that was his comment. And, that's a summary of the controversy that has been created because of his comments. And now this brother is no longer a commentator for CNN because of his statements. And I just wanted to take some time to share my thoughts about this situation. But before I do so, I also wanted to let you all know that back in October, there was a similar controversy involving him and Jews. Like, apparently there was some event. Minister Farrakhan was promoting this Let's Change the World music project. And apparently Marc Lamont Hill was featured in a promotional presentation for this particular project. And people started to criticize him for his ties to Farrakhan. They tried to connect him to Farrakhan and stuff like that. And people have accused Farrakhan of being an anti-Semite and all that kind of stuff. So this created a lot of controversy. And basically, Lamont Hill said, well, there are some things that I agree with Minister Farrakhan on, and there are other things that I don't agree with him on. He said he didn't agree with him on, the statements that he's made about Jewish people or about the LGBT community. But he also talked about how he respects the Nation of Islam and what they've done. He talked about how he does agree with them on some things. And I think that his response was respectable, because for myself, there are things that I agree with the Nation of Islam on there, and there are things that I disagree with them on. So the point is, this is not his first time having controversy involving Jews or, being accused of being anti-Semitic or, tied to anti-Semites. So what I'm going to do is stop sharing my screen for a second. I'm going to look at your comments, and then I'm going to provide my brief commentary about this issue. I want to thank people for tuning in. Just bear with me one second. I'm really interested in hearing from y'all, like, what do y'all think about this particular situation? Now, the first thing that has to be pointed out is that there's a difference between anti-Semitism and somebody opposing political Zionism. Now, Judaism is a religion. This is one of the things that I learned, by working with organizations affiliated with the late, great Kwame Ture, who was formerly known as Stokely Carmichael. There's a difference between Zionism and Judaism. Judaism is a religion. Zionism is a political philosophy. Zionism is a political ideology. And that particular ideology has been used to justify the stealing of Palestinian land and the displacement of Palestinian people, the occupation of Palestinian people's lands, and the oppression of Palestinian people. It's been used to justify an imperialistic type of policy in the Middle East. And they use religion as an excuse to justify a political ideology and political objectives. So that's Zionism, and when somebody condemns the actions of Israel, that's separate from, the issue of condemning somebody because of their faith or anything like that. Condemning the racist, oppressive policies and, suppressive and repressive policies of Israel is not one and the same with, anti-Semitism. You're condemning oppression. You're condemning the exploitation of land, the stealing of land. That's not the same as somebody hating an entire religion. It's about standing up against injustice. It's about condemning something that is wrong. You know, here you have a situation where these people literally stole the land from the Palestinian people, you know, displaced many Palestinian people. And, you know, they have subjugated the Palestinian people. And that should be roundly condemned, and it has been condemned in the UN. You know, many states that had courage condemned that injustice. And the United States is one of the few states that just supports anything Israel does, just about. And anytime somebody has the courage to speak out against the policies of the state of Israel, they automatically try to label them as an anti-Semite. They try to label them as racist or bigoted or something like that. When the fact of the matter is, the real racism is being practiced by the state of Israel. You know, when they subjugate the Palestinian people and when they oppress Black people that come to Israel, you know, seeking asylum, Black people who say that they are of the Jewish faith as well, but they don't treat those Black people as brothers and sisters. Instead, they subject them to discrimination. Instead, they try to get them out of Israel. Instead, they call them invaders and infiltrators, just like how in the US, you had this racist, xenophobic Trump administration, you know, condemning immigrants, you know, calling them invaders. So condemning the racism and the oppression of Palestinian people, you know, the racism against Palestinian people and the racism against Black people in Israel, that does not make you an anti-Semite. That makes you somebody that's standing up for justice, standing up for equality. And this brother, Marc Lamont Hill, is not an anti-Semite. And I'm just here to say that I stand with this brother, and I encourage others to stand with this brother too, because what has happened here is wrong. It's fundamentally wrong. And it's like the injustice that, you know, the Zionists commit gets a pass too often. It gets a pass in the bourgeois corporate media. The corporate media never condemns the terrorism committed by the Israelis against the Palestinian people. They never condemn that. They make excuses for it. They rationalize it. They justify it. They defend it. You have to go to alternative news sources to even find out what's really happening in Israel. You have to go to the BBC, for instance, or Al Jazeera to hear some alternative perspective, because in the United States, they don't give you that perspective. They make it seem like the Israelis are the victims, when it's the Israelis that stole the land, when it's the Israelis that are oppressing the people, not only the Palestinians, but our own Black brothers and sisters in Israel. And we can never forget that it was Israel that supported the apartheid regime in South Africa. You know, when they were subjecting our people to segregation and humiliation and oppression, stealing the land from the South African Black people, Israel was supporting them, you know, supporting the state, you know, the apartheid state there, the white minority, the oppressive white minority there, giving them military technology, military aid, and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, we have to have courage to speak out against this stuff, man. We have to have courage to condemn what the state of Israel is doing to the Palestinian people and to our African brothers and sisters that are trying to immigrate to Israel. Now, some people will say, well, should Black people even talk about what's going on in Palestine? Should we even address that issue? You know, some people will say, well, that's something that's happening in some foreign country. What does that have to do with us? And again, you know, I'll remind you just about the role that Israel played in supporting and helping to prop up the apartheid regime. You know, the role that they're playing today when they oppress our African brothers and sisters who are trying to go to Israel to seek asylum, or trying to go there as Jews, you know, and all that kind of stuff. That's how it's relevant. Their treatment of Black people is relevant. And something that Martin Luther King said, he said, is this very crucial right now. Martin Luther King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. The injustice that is committed against the Palestinian peoples should be of concern to all humanity. Just as a human being, we should have compassion for fellow human beings who are oppressed, especially us, as Black people, a group of people that were enslaved, a group of people that were subjected to Jim Crow, segregation, humiliation, degradation. We should be able to identify with other oppressed people. And the thing that's so tragic about that situation in Palestine, in the occupied territories is here you have a group of people, the Jews, who were subjected to oppression. They were subjected to anti-Semitism in Europe. They were subjected to genocide in Germany and stuff. And you would think that they would learn from that lesson. You would think that they would learn to be compassionate towards their fellow human beings. But here, these people have essentially used that tragedy to justify a current and continuing tragedy in Palestine, the occupation of their territory and the murder and violence and mayhem against the Palestinian people. So, so this is something that we should be concerned about. And, what happens abroad affects us. And another reason why this is relevant is because of the amount of money that the United States gives to the state of Israel. Billions upon billions of dollars is poured into Israel. You have all these Black conservatives, for instance, who complain about the welfare state in the Black community, who complain about all these welfare benefits that the Black community is receiving. But these people don't complain about all the welfare that the state of Israel receives from the United States, all those billions upon billions of dollars that the United States gives to Israel. Nobody's complaining about that. Why is that? Some time ago, I saw reports that said that the state of Israel receives more foreign aid from the United States than all of sub-Saharan Africa. With all the things going on in Africa, all the need for resources and for assistance, this government, the United States government, pours in these billions of dollars to Israel and only gives a fraction of the funds, of foreign aid to Africa in comparison to Israel. And that's outrageous. And that's another reason why these politics matter. We should be advocates for our brothers and sisters in Africa, through the legislative process and, put pressure on them, the government to fund and support African nations and stuff like that. Just like the Zionists put pressure on politicians to fund their state. So that, that's another way. Like all those billions of dollars that are going to Israel could be used to build up struggling communities such as Baltimore or Detroit or many of these urban areas. People have talked about a need for a Marshall Plan to rebuild these different communities, these inner cities. Funds could be used for that, but instead it goes to Israel. And when you speak out against this, you are condemned as an anti-Semite. And it's outrageous, it's crazy. And, some people will say, well, those Palestinians, they don't care anything about Black people or whatever. But I was looking at a story out of Ferguson about a young Palestinian activist who was involved in the Black Lives Matter movement, who was advocating to end police brutality. This Palestinian brother, saw the connections between the movement for the liberation of Palestine and the movement for Black liberation here in the United States. And many of our elders and our ancestors who were actively involved in the Black Power movement understood this as well. I mentioned the brother Stokely Carmichael at the beginning of this. he's a prime example of that. When SNCC became more militant, they realized the connection between the plight of the African American and the plight of Palestinian people. There's a connection between all oppressed people. And it's only when oppressed people around the world unite that we can defeat oppression. So, yeah, so I just want to commend this brother for having the courage to speak out on this issue dealing with Palestine. And also, this whole situation just makes it abundantly clear how much we truly need our own independent Black media. Our own media, so that we can have our own voices instead of having our voices controlled by, whether it's the, conservative media, conservative white media, or even the liberal white media. It's like they have certain parameters in which you have to operate when you're dealing with, the white-owned media. They have a certain liberal talking points that they want you to stick to for certain liberal channels. And then, for the conservative channels, they have certain talking points they want people to stick to. And then when you go outside of those parameters, like this brother, and you start bringing up issues like Palestine, and you start talking about the interests of Black people in a direct and not apologetic type of way, unapologetic kind of way, all of a sudden there's some kind of issue. We need bold, courageous Black media. And there are some Black media out there and stuff like that. But a lot of it is being bought up by these major white corporations. I mean, we see what happened with The Root and, other news outlets or whatever, where Black people had their commentary. And even here on YouTube, we do have some type of freedom to say what we want on here. But even here on YouTube, there are certain rules and regulations. We're still using a white-owned media source to get our messages out here. We know how YouTube operates. They promote certain type of messages that are negative to our people. They give them all this promotion here on YouTube. But if you're talking a certain type of rhetoric about liberating our people with solid ideas, what they'll do is they'll end up what's called shadow banning people, where they limit the amount of exposure you get and they limit the amount of views that you have and all that kind of stuff. But they allow the ignorance to proliferate on here. They allow, a whole bunch of advertising and promotion of the nonsense on here. So this is still not a free forum. This is not a Black-owned forum. Even though we have certain rights to say certain things on here, they have certain community regulations on here that are used to take down Black platforms. I've seen it time and time again, where you have certain YouTubers that get on here and they voice their opinions, and then their channels get shut down and they have to rebuild constantly here on YouTube. So this is not an independent Black space here. And we need to have our own independent Black spaces to convey our own messaging, so that we're not having to worry about offending, worrying about offending these Zionists and stuff like that, worrying about getting fired just for speaking the truth about, the injustice that's going on in Palestine. Most of these politicians and stuff, they can't even speak on this stuff for fear of getting voted out or getting, having the Zionists support their opponent and stuff with resources. And when I talk about Zionists, I'm talking about groups like AIPAC, that support the oppressive policies of the state of Israel, to support all that welfare funding to the state of Israel. So yeah, I just had to get on here and voice my support for this brother. He's going to be just fine. He has some book coming out. He still has a job as a professor and all that kind of stuff. But we can't sit by and allow these media sources to treat, our brothers and sisters like this, man. We have to push back against this stuff, man. This is just fundamentally wrong. They have all kinds of people on CNN. They don't fire them, like somebody pointed out, like that guy Rick Santorum and some of the ridiculous things he said and done, and they still keep him around. They allow, for instance, as as what's her name? Soledad O'Brien, I think that's her name. So hopefully I'm not messing it up. But a black sister was talking about how CNN undermines their own credibility by allowing white nationalists to come on to CNN and voice their opinions. They give those white nationalists legitimacy. And here they are having the audacity to fire this brother for speaking out against the injustice that goes on in Palestine. It's like they want to give these Zionists a pass to continue to terrorize the Palestinian people, to continue to occupy Palestinian territory. And the last thing I want to get to is his statements about this issue of violence, this issue of resistance to violence. And, I'll just say this, man. Oppressed people have every right to defend themselves. I don't condone any terrorism. I don't condone violence against innocent people, against children and women and stuff like that. I obviously don't condone that. But I do condone self-defense. Every nation has a right to defend itself. Every occupied people have a right to defend their land and to defend their people. If some foreign power were to come to the United States and occupy any of this United States territory, people would fight to the very end to protect their territory and their people and stuff like that. People would take up arms, and those people would be called patriots for fighting against an occupier. And the same should be true for people in Palestine, man, fighting against the occupation of their land. And this brother also pointed out how there should be some kind of peaceful effort, but we can't just limit, tell people that are oppressed that they can only resist their oppression through nonviolent means. So, I had to express that view. And then we can make a difference here, through boycotts and stuff like that. By calling for boycotts against the state of Israel, just like people called for boycotts against apartheid South Africa. So I'm going to see what y'all have to say before I close out. I want to thank y'all for tuning in. I appreciate it. And I'm probably going to do a live stream on my I Declare War channel right after this. I want to do 2 quick videos over there. So y'all look out for that. If you're not subscribed to my I Declare War channel, I encourage you to subscribe tonight and hit the notification bell so that you'll know when I'm uploading new content. I'm trying to get back to regularly posting over there, and I want to try to build up the subs over there. Also, I want to remind you all that I have a goal of trying to reach 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year. So I hope that you all can help me in that endeavor. So Philip said Marc Lamont Hill got his wake-up call. Yeah, he did get his wake-up call, but he also received that call, as I was talking about earlier, when somehow his image was equated with this Minister Louis Farrakhan promotion and all that kind of stuff. He got his wake-up call then. Yeah, so Ahmed said the land that they're fighting over doesn't belong to either one of them. The fact of the matter is, Palestinians have been occupying that land for hundreds of years before, before the recent creation of the state of Israel. They have been occupying that land for hundreds of years before Israel occupied the West Bank and Gaza Strip. So you could say, well, thousands of years somebody else was there, but the fact of the matter is that the Palestinian people were there for hundreds of years before these people from Europe came to Palestine and occupied their territory and forcefully removed Palestinian people from that territory. So, Macon, what negative things did Marc Lamont Hill say about other people? And, people are saying the conscious community says, call him a sellout and this and that. I don't see him as a sellout. If people are saying that he's a sellout, I need to see actual proof. I need to have what these people call receipts before, I mark somebody off as a sellout. And half of the time, these quote unquote conscious people aren't even conscious. They don't do anything but promote themselves. They're not about any kind of real activism or anything here on YouTube, especially these people here on YouTube. So half of the time, I take what a lot of these people say with a grain of salt. Um, but if there's evidence that this brother is some kind of sellout, I need to see it. A lot of times people throw out these terms. They say so and so's a sellout without providing actual facts and actual proof. I was watching this video today where this person, I think it was Judge Brown or somebody on one of these channels, who had the nerve to say that Amiri Baraka, the great activist, the late great activist, they tried to call him an agent, an FBI informant. And this person offers zero proof to make that argument. And we got to be leery of that kind of stuff, man. We got to be leery and cautious of misinformation and disinformation being put out here to undermine people that are actually doing stuff. Yeah, so I agree with Macomb. He said it was wrong to settle that region back in 1948 and take that land that rightfully belonged to other groups that were there way before the European Jews. Exactly. And people are saying that independent Black media is needed. Black media is a must. Yeah, because you don't have TV1, they had a news program with Roland Martin on there. And TV1 is one of the few independent, Black owned sources of media. And they had they had that powerful, news program that Roland Martin has set up. And now, that program is ended. And now the brother has his channel on YouTube and stuff like that. But they had a news channel. And it's we have to support stuff like that if we want it to thrive. I mean, too often we're more likely to support reality TV than we are to support, quality Black news and information. And that's a shame, man. It's a shame that we don't support our own media. I mean, people are more likely to support some music videos and all that kind of foolishness, trivial, inconsequential type of things, instead of supporting independent Black media. Roland Martin, he had certain guests on his program that you don't see in mainstream media. Despite my disagreements with Umar Johnson, he had Umar Johnson on his program. Now, what major news networks are you aware of that had somebody like a Umar Johnson on their program? And then he has all these other types of people that many of us never heard of and stuff like that. And because of what he did, he's one of the first people that had, for instance, that woman, Angela Rye, on his program, before she was all over CNN and stuff like that. And it's this whole situation, with CNN, it's just another reminder just how we're not truly free. It's this brother speaks out on this issue of Palestine and he loses his job. But this is to be expected. When you have, when you're using somebody else's media, you have to realize that their primary goal is to promote their own particular message. It's not to be an equal opportunity entity when it comes to spreading news and information, despite all this talk about being fair and balanced, from all these different networks and stuff. They have an agenda. They have a message that they're pushing. And if you go contrary to that message, they're going to get rid of you. So again, that's another reminder of why we need our own. Just bear with me 1 second, y'all. Yeah, black channels do get taken down regularly here on YouTube, man. I've seen people lose their channels constantly. And sadly, the reason why they're losing their channel is because you have people that manipulate these community guidelines here on YouTube, and they use them to silence people that they hate on, or people that are their rivals, and all this pettiness. And unfortunately, a lot of times it's not even some white person from the outside or some white supremacist. Often it's infighting amongst black people that leads to many of these channels getting shut down and stuff. Um, but that's a whole nother subject. So Macon said he supports the BDS movement. I'm not familiar with that movement. Can you add more information about that to let people know what it is? Yeah, somebody pointed out here, Israel was doing business with apartheid South Africa when others were boycotting them. So it's like y'all got to remember that stuff when you think about Israel, when you think about what they're doing to the Palestinian people and to our African brothers and sisters in Israel. And as somebody else pointed out here, they gave South Africa nuclear technology. And James Hall said that Hill should have seen this coming. His firing was predictable after that comment. Oh, somebody said that Israel tried to infiltrate the Black Lives Matter movement and make them pro-Israel. I'm not familiar with that. Oh, somebody said Marc Lamont Hill said some disparaging remarks about the late Francis Cress Welsing. I'm gonna have to look into that. And from what I remember, I think he was saying that he didn't agree with like some of the views that she espoused, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with somebody disagreeing with someone's views and stuff like that, because she has, her positions are controversial and stuff like that. Her analysis and her, psycho analysis of white people and stuff like that. It's controversial, and everybody doesn't necessarily agree with it, and they don't have to agree with it. Just because somebody doesn't agree with everything that a Francis Quest Welsing has to say or Minister Louis Farrakhan has to say, that doesn't make them a sellout. Just bear with me for 1 minute. So, Big Game said that the ambush on Dr. Umar proved that TV1's news program was not on our side. I don't think that's necessarily true, man. I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I did disagree with some of the statements that people made, like especially when they were like criticizing Umar Johnson for supporting Black love and Black relationships and stuff like that, and basically speaking out against Black men pursuing white women. And it was odd that you would have Black women complaining about that when he's talking about how Black men need to be with Black women. So, I mean, I understand your criticism, but at the same time, I'll say this: TV1 had a lot of great news information. They talked about a lot of our issues that rarely get discussed in mainstream media. So despite my disagreements with how they handled that particular segment, I won't use that particular segment to say, well, TV1 didn't have Black people's interests at heart at all, because TV1, they regularly report on issues affecting Black people. I mean, News One is one of the sources that I think News One was one of the sources that I used for this particular video right here. Um, Yeah, so I feel what you're saying, but I respectfully disagree with your statement about TV1 not supporting or not being on our side. Oh, okay. I see. Macom said that stands for the BDS stands for boycott, divestment, and sanctions. Yeah, I support that. I support that as well. That's a nonviolent way that people can make a difference in that whole situation. Dave Monroe said the Arabs hate black people. Yeah, I mean, you have some Arabs that are racist. I wouldn't get up here and say that it's Arab, all Arabs love black people or all Arabs are our brothers and sisters and all that kind of stuff. I don't say that. I acknowledge that there's racism in the Middle East. Obviously, there's racism all over the planet. But we can't say that all Arabs are racist. Just like, we wouldn't want somebody saying, something negative about all black people. Um, yeah, I heard about that. Fine Coco mentioned that Israel's even trying to have a seat at the African Union table. And he said they need to stay in their lane. Um, yeah, I remember seeing an article about that. Um, but I need more information about that situation. But yeah, I heard about that as well. All right. So shout out to Dave Bowman. Thanks for tuning in. Yeah, so I just wanted to hop on here for a second and share my views about this situation. For those people who are watching this after this uploaded, I want to hear from you. What do you think about Marc Lamont Hill being fired by CNN for making statements about Palestine and Israel? So I look forward to your comments. Please rate, comment, and subscribe, like this video, share this video, and encourage your friends and colleagues to subscribe to my channel, New Possibilities. So with that, I'm going to say peace and blessings to each and every one of you. Also, again, check me out on my I Declare War channel. There are a couple of videos that I want to do tonight. Peace.